Welcome to the first of 5 podcasts in a series from Qualification Cymru, where ahead of the Senedd elections, we've been looking at each of the 5 themes of our policy asks for the next Welsh Government. Today, we're going to be discussing the first theme, which looks at expanding citizens' entitlement and engagement with education. But before we get into the discussion, let's do some introductions. I'm Rachel Bowen, and I'm the Director of Policy and Public Affairs here at Qualification Cymru. Joining me to discuss this topic is Qualification Cymru Chair and Chief Executive of Coleg Gwent, Guy Lacey.
Hi there.
And Chief Executive of Addysg Oedolion Cymru, Adult Learning Wales, the National Community College, Catherine Robson.
Good morning.
Great. So the theme of today's discussion is expanding citizens' entitlement and engagement with education. We're calling for a variety of different actions, such as making sure everyone is funded to get their first level 3 qualification, starting with under 25s and then extending this out. We want young people to engage with educational training until they're 18. We also want to build on the new curriculum bill to allow learners aged 14 to 16 to have better access to vocational technical pathways. Digital inclusion has also been a big issue recently. So we want all learners in Wales to have access to devices for digital learning, the right software and high-speed internet access. And lastly, we're asking for a commitment to deliver a 3-year FE budget to enable more effective planning. So, lots of food for thought. And maybe I'll come to you first, Catherine. Can you tell us a little bit about why people being funded to access their first level 3 qualification could make a big difference in adult learning, when we know that adult learning obviously encompasses a huge variety of types of learning and different learners?
Well, I think it's extremely important, Rachel, as we recover from the coronavirus pandemic. In terms of our economic recovery, it's really important that we invest in adult skills and give people the opportunity to engage in a journey of lifelong learning, essentially. We know that careers don't last for life these days. People are moving on, they are looking at choice. They are looking at new opportunities, and it's very important that we invest in those transferable skills, particularly as the economy changes, businesses change, the demands on digital technology and digital literacy and that knowledge and that engagement is very important. Historically, adult skills have been underinvested, and I think there is a real opportunity here, particularly given our current circumstances, to really think about how much we value the engagement that we have in adult skills and investing in those transferable skills. The other thing I would say is that in terms of committing to adults in terms of learners, they are very committed. They are more likely to be able to commit to their learning programs and have more at stake, essentially. So I think that is very important as well, leading to very good outcomes and progression opportunities. And clearly, active citizenship and social purpose are key features here as well. We want to be able to support and demonstrate our commitment to the Wellbeing of the Future Generations Act and meet those 7 goals in terms of a resilient and prosperous Wales going forward. And that really ties in with the progressive agreement between the Education Minister and the First Minister of December 2018, and their commitment to exploring a new Welsh right to lifelong learning and investing in skills which people need throughout their lives for individual, societal and economic benefit. And I think the work that England's done in introducing the Lifetime Skills Guarantee, which provides qualifications up to the age of 23 in some subject areas, is a good start.
Thanks, Catherine, and lots of food for thought there and lots of different things going on and initiatives that we could certainly look at over the next 5 years with the new government. Guy, over at Coleg Gwent, adult learning is a slightly different part of what you do. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how the ideas we've put forward could impact positively on learners in your college?
Yeah, I think everything Catherine said was right. I mean, we know, don't we, that research has shown time and time again that people's lifetime earnings are supported hugely by moving across that threshold from being qualified at level 2 to level 3. So I agree with everything that Catherine said about the the wider social and economic benefit of us having an approach to lifelong learning, which says that adults can access qualifications up to level 3. In College Gwent, obviously, you know, our learner population is very, very mixed. So, you know, our learners are everything from age 14 to, you know, your grandparents' ages, you know, and everything in between. And yeah, you know, there's a great focus on the younger age groups, and clearly there is a drive there to try and make sure that in a region that has a profile of social and economic deprivation, that we support the progression to level 3 for as many young people as we can, but also for adults in our community, because as Catherine was saying, the world of work is changing fundamentally, and I think it's got to be a core part of what we do as a sector to help adults continue to be engaged in education and training beyond most people's usual expectations of where that would finish. You know, leave school, leave college, that's it. Well, no longer. World of work has changed fundamentally, and your life chances and your life prospects are greatly enhanced when you make that commitment to further upskilling and further development and further training. So I think that's got to be core mission for all of our organisations in the sector.
Absolutely, and those points about there not being one career for life anymore that both of you have made, and that everybody should have an expectation of upskilling, lifelong learning, you know, those are certainly things that we want to see embedded in, you know, current and future citizens of Wales. Guy, you've touched on the issue of 14 to 16 education. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about why it's important that we make sure that young people aged 14 to 16 get a quality experience of vocational education, and maybe a little bit about why, if young people were needed to engage in educational training, not, you know, kind of just force people to stay in school, but if young people had to engage with educational training up until the age of 18, why that might have some positive benefits.
Well, I think the first point to make is that, you know, we fundamentally have a school system which, to date, pre these most recent curriculum reforms, to date has been centred around some fairly deeply ingrained historic ideas about what constitutes the school curriculum that everyone should learn. And I hasten to add, I'm saying this as someone who actually was a history teacher, so I feel pretty passionately about history and the importance of history in the curriculum. So please don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking the traditional core of what I think most people would agree children should be exposed to during their schooling. But the harsh realities are that diet of those core traditional subjects doesn't suit every child. And the other harsh reality is that it doesn't necessarily suit the needs of our economy as we move forward into the future. So it is critically important that children in that vital age range around what is currently the compulsory school leaving age of 16, that they understand that there are other pathways and there are other routes. And yes, if like me, you were very, very keen on history, then fine, there's absolutely no reason not to go and do a history degree. And for my sins, to then go on to teacher education and become a member of a fantastic sector, which is teaching. But equally, there are other paths that young people can take, and they should know about them. And I think it comes down, for me, it boils down to a simple principle, and that is informed choice. We talk a lot, and we've heard a lot about in recent years about parity of esteem. You know, why is it that we seem to have this sort of 19th century class-based approach, which says middle-class children follow one route, and then the children of other people follow a different vocational route? Well, parity of esteem, which is clearly evident in a lot of European education systems, has to be based on informed choice, and it has to be about saying that there are careers and their pathways, whether that's a pathway in engineering or a pathway in science or a pathway in technology, that can be the equal and can be revered and valued by society just as much as the sort of pathway I took, which was a degree in history and politics.
Thank you. And obviously my own degree's in history, so I think historians are doing pretty well at the moment. But the point is that yes, it's about what's right for individual learners and individual learners throughout the course of their lives. That what's right when you're 18 or 19 may not be right when you're 25. You may want to do something completely different when you're 45 or even 75. Digital exclusion has obviously been a big topic over the past 12 months with COVID-19, and there's been a lot of attention paid to young people being, needing to access devices and Wi-Fi. But we know that these challenges aren't just challenges for, for younger learners. They're challenges for adults too, with the closure of community venues temporarily because of coronavirus. Catherine, do you want to tell us a bit about the issues of digital exclusion, the challenges that people have faced, and what we could do about that in the sphere of adult learning?
Yes, well, I think I'd like to start off by saying it's not all about exclusion, it's not all about connectivity issues, because what we're finding is there's such a significant digital skills gap that, particularly for adult learners, that really does need to be addressed. And there has been tremendous investment in digital literacy upskilling, but we're touching the surface, and we need to pay better attention to it to support those learners. The technical advances are so rapid that it's very difficult and challenging for lots of individuals to keep up with that. So from our experience at Addysg Oedolion Cymru Adult Learning Wales, we've been able to match to a certain extent some exclusion issues or meet learners' needs. What is becoming more apparent is that digital skills gap, and that's where, for us, we've had to pay a great deal of attention and put those support arrangements in place. Clearly, parts of Wales do suffer from connectivity issues. We have issues around affordability of appropriate devices, and clearly affordability around the actual connection to broadband as well. So that is a challenge, and something that Welsh Government, I know, have been investigating in order to come up with some solutions, and we want to be part of that solution. We want to be able to support and input into those decisions, because we've got a lot of experience and evidence of the challenges faced by learners. Equipping community centres is a very important area as well. We operate on a normal year from over 650 community venues across Wales. Some of them are quite ancient, with big thick walls, and picking up appropriate levels of broadband can be a challenge. So I think that's an area of investment that needs to be paid attention to, certainly. And language barriers as well. We're working with lots of learners who are learning English and Welsh, and that digital connection can be a challenge for them, particularly those who are entry level, starting to learn the first stages of languages. And I think there's an importance here to invest in resources to support those individuals as well. And particularly those with additional learning needs, is making sure that we've got a reliable and user-friendly interface that supports those individuals. So I think all in all, Welsh Government, clearly are paying attention to this. We want to support any initiatives. We think that if there is any opportunity to enhance the digital entitlement to all learners of all ages, then clearly this is a very important area.
I think you've brought out there, Catherine, really well the fact that when we're talking about digital exclusion, we're not just talking about lack of broadband or lack of kit. It's so much broader than that, for all the reasons that you just mentioned. Obviously, Guy and Coleg Gwent, you'll have been facing similar kinds of issues. We'll have had some different kind of challenges over the past 12 months. Do you want to talk a little bit about why, the challenges you faced and what the next Welsh Government should do to help?
Yeah, I think Kath makes a really important point about the skills. I think what our experience of managing COVID and moving to remote learning, blended learning and so on, yeah, we've faced very similar challenges in terms of community outreach centres, and yeah, some of them are very old and infrastructure is very fragile and so on. But for me, there's been a really interesting illustration of the point that digital skills across the age range are hugely variable, and I think we have a tendency to think that maybe digital skills are much more developed amongst younger people, and then older learners, adult learners, are the ones who don't know how to switch the laptop on. Well, no, that's just not the case. And I think it's been really interesting to see how many younger people who you might at first sight think have very good digital skills because they've constantly got a mobile phone in their hand and they live their lives through a mobile phone, are actually just demonstrating that they're very proficient at using a small number of apps or a small number of pieces of software. And once you start making demands on them through their learning of using a broader variety of applications, and once you start using a broader approach to technology, which I have to say, our workforce has been, frankly, has been fantastic in lockdown. The sort of creativity and imagination that I've seen teaching staff using to try to bridge the gap during periods of remote working has been fantastic. So I think there's a key there, which when we talk about our ask of Welsh Government being to address this digital deficit, we need to understand that as welcome as the fantastic support from Welsh Government has been financially for kit, it goes beyond that. And yeah, there is a wider infrastructure issue, but there is also this skills issue.
Catherine, I can see you've got something to add.
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, I agree with everything that Guy's just said, but there's a massive gap as well in terms of digital experience in the corporate world. So for young learners joining the corporate world for the first time, or any individual who hasn't had that experience, it's a whole different ballgame and it's a whole different language. In a corporate world, in a business world, we're still using email, which some would regard as quite old-fashioned and something that younger people, well, all people who don't, lots of people who embark on a digital experience are not using email regularly. And the corporate language that we use, the business language that we use as well, can be quite a challenge. And I can think of one young person who I had a discussion about their first sort of few weeks at work, and they didn't actually know which side of an envelope to put a stamp, because we just don't use those postal services anymore like we used to, and asking for our advice of how they should frame an email in the appropriate language, and not using text speak. And I think there's a job of work to do for the FE sector, for all of us, in order to really invest in those skills to ensure that our learners who are leaving education and training are equipped for the world of work.
I think there are some really good examples there about how the world of work has changed quite rapidly over the past sort of 5, 10, 15 years in particular. And last question then to both of you. I'll come to you first, Catherine, but one of the things that we're calling for is a move towards 3-year budgets for further education. We understand that for a variety of reasons, it's only been possible to look 12 months ahead from government point of view, but ideally we'd like to move towards being able to look at things for 3 years. Why is this important, Catherine, and what difference would it make?
I think it's extremely important. As an FE sector, we adapt very well to changing priorities. We're used to formulating budgets on assumptions, and those assumptions have to be well thought out, and we can't really plan to the degree that we want to for any emerging issues, priorities or challenges. So you have to really think ahead in that sense. A 3-year budget for FE would just provide so much more security and stability, because we could then plan for any emerging issues that might come our way. And it really does help with our strategic planning around curriculum planning, planning for learner services, looking at the economic developments across Wales, looking at where the investment will be in jobs in the future, and ensuring that we line all those things up really. So those assumptions are something that we're used to as a sector, but I know we would very much welcome as a sector a 3-year budget for FE so that we can really improve our planning and our delivery arrangements, identify risks as well, and essentially plan more effectively.
Thanks, Catherine, and same question to you, Guy.
I think everything that Catherine just said, plus I guess, you know, most of our expenditure is on staff. So I think a 3-year budget setting would allow us to have greater certainty around forward planning of staff requirements. So clearly, you know, as we move into the COVID recovery phase, we're going to have to be looking at what staff we need to support that future development. So I think a 3-year funding settlement for the sector would really help in terms of workforce planning. And the other one for me would be, it would just make capital program planning so much easier. You know, all of us are involved in one way or another in quite extensive capital projects from time to time, whether that's new buildings or whether that's big IT projects. And I think, again, you know, as we move through the planning of those sort of capital programs, a 3-year funding settlement would really help the sector in many ways. So yeah, for me, this would be one of the things which I would say to the Welsh Government would just really provide a really welcome foundation for us to be able to move the sector fully into that COVID recovery mode for the future, because we've got a critical role to play in helping Wales move through what we're going to have to do in terms of addressing the challenges that coming out of the pandemic will undoubtedly place on not just our economy, but our communities.
I think you're absolutely right. I think we've had a really good discussion. So before I wrap this up, Catherine, any final reflections on this theme? Anything else that you'd like to draw out that's particularly important?
I think just coming back to this point about really making sure that the FE sector remains really flexible and adaptable, which we're really, really good at as a sector. We look ahead, and coming back to Guy's points in terms of the funding element of that would really help us as well. It's time that we got the lifelong learning, the right to lifelong learning in place. The sector is hugely supportive of this. We understand the value, we understand the benefits of that. We need to respond to the demands that we see ahead of us in relation to economic recovery in a post-pandemic situation, and looking at those transferable skills. So investment right through from entry into the school education system, right through to further and higher education, and into employment as well, is really important. And I think coming back to the digital element of it, let's just make sure that we really do address this digital skills deficit, because it's really important that we give our citizens in Wales every opportunity to develop their skills.
Absolutely. And Guy, any closing reflections from you?
I think I think to re-emphasize that point about you know, I think we're standing on a watershed at the moment. You know, we've been through pandemic, we've been through other huge political change. In a recent event, I made a throwaway remark about, you know, we've all forgotten about Brexit. You know, we're on a watershed at the moment, and I guess it all comes down to what can we collectively do as a sector to make sure that we move through the post-pandemic phase in a way that creates greater opportunity and gives people an opportunity to address some of the things that were wrong in the past. And you know, we have as a nation, we had a history of communities who have suffered deprivation and disadvantage. And I think, we need to do everything we can now to grasp the moment and try and make sure that this recovery leads to a juster and fairer society for all. And further education has got to play an absolutely central and core part in that, in helping and supporting our communities move through that process. And we do that, hopefully we do that with great support and fantastic encouragement from the Welsh Government.
And I think that theme of let's get it right for everybody in the future is a really good place to wrap things up. So it just remains for me to thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Guy, for your contribution today, and to tell people that they can listen to this and the other podcasts in the series by visiting our website, which is colegau.cymru. On our website, you'll find our Policy Asks document and lots of further information relating to our activities for the Senedd election 2021. We hope that you found this podcast interesting. We're really keen to hear your thoughts, and we're really keen to encourage you to leave a comment or question where this is possible, or to get in touch with us to have a chat about any of these things further. Thanks very much.